is I've met and come across a lot of people who hate the quiet. They hate sitting by themselves alone. They hate being where there is no noise, no distraction. I was one of those people. And the reason why I find people hate the quiet is because in the quiet, you can hear everything that's going on up in here. The sad reality is when it is quiet and you have been through trauma, you have problems in your life, you have things that you haven't dealt with, they come to the surface, they come to the light. So what we try to do is find ways to ignore them. So this would be a matter of keeping busy, eating, watching TV, doing mindless activities, literally mindless activities, so that we can block what is coming to the forefront. Now, our body, our brain, our being is so special. It is so amazing because it actually tells us what we need to do in life. Yet, as humans, we've learned how to ignore our signals, how to ignore our senses because, well, technically we're not in threat as much as we were back in the day. For example, there is no bear chasing me. So I can hold out with my signals a little longer, even if that problem is sitting in my head and really should be dealt with now because it's riddling my body, riddling my soul, riddling my environment with horrible things. It's not making me perform. It's not allowing me to sleep. But no, it's okay. I can just pull it aside because it's not a matter of life and death. And this is the amazing thing about the body is it's really there to signal you to say, hey, let's deal with this thing. But it's very good with life and death situations. We can dissociate, we can act, we can fight, we can do all of these things in the moment. But what we also are good at doing as humans is surviving and suffering through for a very long time when it's only a small little piece of the puzzle that is affecting us. So there might be an old trauma, there might be a current situation that's not life and death, but it's slowly eating you up inside and you're like, well, I'll leave it, I'll deal with it later. Eventually we get to a point where we just ignore it. And it's not that it's gone. The muscles store that trauma, the brain stores it, your memories still have it, your inner being still knows it exists, and you're just locking it down in a box. And all of a sudden in the quiet, they start opening. That box starts ringing, knocking, and starts surfacing these things. And people that have dealt with trauma and have learned the mechanism of dissociating and literally putting things in that box so well have accumulated so much crap in there that eventually that box is about to explode. And in the silence, it has its best opportunity to say, hey, can you now listen to me? And if you don't listen, it will then either hurt you through a physical sense. So you'll start getting niggles, injuries, discomfort, pain. Then we get illnesses, conditions, and then the body breaks. And whether it's mentally or physically, they are just as bad. And I always say the body talks to you. It sings at you. It then yells. It then will give you an injury, break something. It will give you an illness or disease, and then it will kill you. And at what point will we listen? And those who have suffered the darkest and deepest traumas are willing to suffer through all the way to the end. Some people are very quick to respond and quick to act on problems because potentially their body is really in signal of going, hey, I don't like that, I want to change it. I don't like that, I want to change it. Now, if you've dealt with your trauma, you'll be that person. As soon as a situation arises, you're like, nope, I'm not letting this go in that box. But people who haven't dealt with trauma will let it linger in that box. And eventually, in the silence, will you hear that box screaming out to you? Now, for me, it was a matter of understanding what it is I want to deal with. And sometimes you know what the deepest, darkest trauma is, but it's about getting there first. You don't just jump to that. I had to work on small layers, small steps of things that were surface, that were in the forefront, that had been layered on top of that darkest trauma, and work on those and actually sit there and go, okay, I don't like this. I need to change this in my life. I need to have this conversation. I need to change my behavior here. I need to do this. I need to ask for help here. And it would be a matter of working on those components slowly to get to the point where I'm like, hey, I'm face to face with the monster. And then when I am face to face with that monster, well, I've done all this work to get to this point. Now I'm technically ready to deal with it. And in that moment, can you face the deepest fears, deepest, darkest desires, or deepest, darkest problems and actually see them for what they are? And be honest with them and then deal with them. And then all of a sudden the silence is actually quiet. Then there is a point where you can sit at home by yourself and not wait for someone to be home. Not try and fiddle with your phone, have to distract yourself with a task, studying, learning, watching a TV show, whatever it is, or eating. You could just sit there and go, hey, I'm content, I'm happy. And the first time I felt that feeling, I felt this power of like, I actually don't need anyone. I don't need anything. I don't need a place. I'm okay. It's a very liberating feeling, and it can also be a very dangerous feeling because at the same time you're like, well, leave me alone. You know you need to have environment, you need bonds, you need connections. But at the same time, without that self-connection where you understand who you truly are and understand that all of the experiences you've had are just that. They are experiences. Some with lessons, some maybe not with lessons because they are traumas out of your power. Now, if we can sit and face them and we can work through them, eventually those experiences no longer linger within us and they just become lessons in a box that we can one day pick out if we are confronted with that problem or that situation again. So, my word of advice, if you are the person who hates to be alone or sit in the quiet or is always looking for a distraction, stop for a moment and listen to what your body is actually asking you to deal with. Is there signaling of pain? Is there signaling of illness or there's something going wrong? Is your mind asking you to deal with something? Is your body physically asking you to deal with something? And then just be honest with yourself to what that is. Sometimes it's harsh reality looking at ourselves and going, wow, I really don't like this thing that I've allowed or I've become or that I'm doing. And it's a matter of going, well, I have the power to change that. So discuss it first with yourself. Sit in silence. And if you're uncomfortable in the silence to the point where you literally cannot be there alone by yourself or need to be distracted, you got to work on yourself. It is imperative that you know how to sit alone so that you can be at peace with yourself, and then you can bring others into your life. Then you can go and actually challenge yourself to be better, to be greater, to elevate yourself far and beyond.